Welcome to another edition of the Digital Dialogue hosted by the Institute for Digital Transformation. I'm Nora Osman. I'm founder and CEO of 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝘶, a customer experience optimization expert company focused on capturing every interaction with customers, internal or external, and turning those zero moments into hero moments. But I'm also a fellow with the Institute for Digital Transformation, and I'm really excited to have you join us here today for this amazing panel on a very near and dear topic to my heart, at least, and to those hearts of everybody who's here with us. So I'm extremely excited about today because we're going to be talking about EX, the employee experience, and that being equivalent to the customer experience, the CX, and really what that experience advantage is. After all, we're all human on both sides of the equation. So we're going to have a really good conversation. Welcome, everybody. Let me introduce this amazing panel that we have today, each with their unique lens into the world of experience. And here with us, we're going to start with 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝗁, who is a seasoned healthcare executive with deep expertise in internal communications, employee engagement, and brand strategy. As Chief Marketing, Communications, and Development Officer at Ascenda Integrated Health, she leads initiatives that connect mission to message, foster organizational alignment, and elevate the employee experience. Marie also teaches graduate-level management courses and frequently speaks on building communication culture that drives impact from the inside out. Welcome, Marie.
Thank you so much. Thrilled to be here.
Thanks for joining us. And with us is also 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝗶𝗁, who is a global customer experience leader with nearly 20 years of driving transformation across international organizations. She's known for turning complex challenges into growth opportunities by aligning people, process, and technology. 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝗁 specializes in operationalizing customer success, elevating the voice of the customer, and building high-impact customer-centric cultures that drive long-term value. Welcome, 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝗁.
Thanks.
Good to have you. And last but certainly not least, we have 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗂𝗶, who is leading the product strategy team at 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗂𝗶, an enterprise IT experience management platform, one we should all know about. And he is helping IT teams become more human-centric in the decision-making processes. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Harry, thank you so much. Thank you, all three of you, for making time. I know this is the day after Labor Day here in the US, so maybe there's been a lot of excitement over the last 24 hours, but yet again, we are here for a very important topic to discuss EX being equal to CX and why that is, and what the experience advantage is. So before we jump into a bunch of questions, I really want to talk for a minute about EX, employee experience, and why that's important to each of us. I'm going to just lead by saying, for me, our first customer is our employee. And so unless we take care of that internal customer, that employee, it's very difficult to actually transact a positive customer experience. So that's the lens I look through for the rest of the interactions and the world of processes and everything. But I want to hear from all of you, one by one. What do you see the importance of EX and why are we talking about it today? So we'll start with you, Marie, if you can just give us your high-level view on that.
Yeah, I mean, as you mentioned, our, employees are our first customer. And, I think they're also the most credible brand ambassadors that we have. So how they speak about the organization to their external audience is certainly paramount to give somebody a good experience. So, I work in healthcare, and employees who are feeling engaged, feeling connected to their workplace, deliver better care. And there's been studies showing, the importance between, employee experience and customer experience. And in healthcare, even things like safety and all of those, there's such a big connection. And I think we oftentimes are so focused on employee experience as an HR type of mandate, and we forget that, it's really a growth strategy. And so that's kind of how we look at it at my organization. It's not just an HR mandate, it's not just an HR responsibility, but it's really a growth strategy to help bring the organization forward.
That's a really, really important thing. And thinking of them as ambassadors, I love hearing that. This is such a big deal, communicating your brand. Courtney, you want to add to that?
Yeah, Mary, I love what you just said. I mean, employees are the heart blood of the organization, and they are who can represent your brand best. And so when I think about, the different organizations I've been with, it's really around helping people understand how they fit and why they matter and how their work creates value. And so in order for them to feel like they can help chart the journey that the organization's going on, they really need to feel that connection. And so if you have that connection to your employees, it absolutely shows up in how they serve your customers.
Well said. Well said. 𝗗𝘂𝗏, I know you've got your own viewpoint on this, and definitely share.
Yeah, I mean, thanks again for letting me be here in this conversation, and I'm going to actually pick up on something that Mary said in the beginning about the healthcare industry. And one of the things that we sometimes compare IT experience. So our company works with internal IT teams that are trying to provide the best possible experience for the employees internally. So for them, those are the internal customers, and they are the employees. But then when thinking about that purpose piece, I mean, sometimes we compare the old way of doing IT to maybe being a hospital and being measured and on how many people you get out the door once they come in. But actually what you should be measuring is how many people you cure once they have come in. And that sort of is the whole care aspect of it, and putting sort of the customer at heart and instilling that sense of purpose for everyone working in the organization towards that common goal.
Yeah, you're spot on. And I think healthcare and all industries really have that same driver to turn around a specific type of experience, a unique experience that makes the customers want to come back and tell other customers how great that interaction is and to use that service or that provider, right? So I'm going to jump right into this idea of the link, right, between EX and CX. What's the connection between that employee experience and customer loyalty that often gets overlooked? And once you see it, you really can't unsee it. Help us unpack that a little bit. I'm going to go back to you, 𝗗𝗏𝗏, and tell me a little bit more about what you see through connecting organizations with the voice of the customer and how that works.
If I look at this from a point of view that is a little bit more applicable also outside of IT, and I like one American researcher called Josh Bersin that had looked at, can you actually create a direct link between that employee experience and the customer experience? And what he found is that there are certain principles by which organizations can adhere to and practices that can put in place. And the ones that do are twice as likely to exceed financial targets. They are 4 times as likely to innovate effectively. And for example, from the employee point of view, they're also more than 5 times more likely to be a great place to work. So the link is there, and it is a certain set of practices and a certain set of principles that is being put in place in the organization that do drive those outcomes. But sometimes the link has to be looked at over the longer period of time where you can see these bottom line improvements in a more tangible way.
And do you see organizations actually sharing the findings once they go down that path? In other words, do they communicate their ROI in any way that other companies may see it?
Yes and no. I think that people who are on the operational level can sometimes have a hard time really seeing the longer term impact of the things that they do. And it is then more up to the leadership to also give that mandate to the whole organization to focus on the employee experience in order to improve the customer experience. And they can maybe have the possibility of then tracking those bigger improvements. But I think most customer-centric or employee-centric leaders in the organizations, the ones that really want to drive these agendas, in any case, they will be called upon to show the return on investment. And then it becomes sometimes a conversation around what is that return on investment. But I would love to hear the other panelists' point of view on what that return on investment or what that like sort of return on experience could be and their examples.
All right, I see Courtney looking to jump in here and add something to that.
Yeah, Zachary always has such thoughtful ways of explaining things. I love it. And I know, Mary, you and I have chatted before, and you have some great, insights here too. But, really, I think it's clear, as Zachary just shared, is that without a strong, engaged and really great feeling employee experience, you can't achieve that customer experience that you're looking for. I think while maybe I see that it's not necessarily overlooked, but it's when companies go all in on customer experience, I think that they think that the employee is a separate place. And so, as Mary had shared earlier, it sits in HR, or it sits in a different area that isn't necessarily connected. And so, as customer experience leaders, I think it's really important for us to make sure that we are, beating the drum on how important it is that our employees need to come along with this. And so even if it doesn't sit in our organizations or it's not under our responsibilities, how do we make sure that we're inserting that? Do we have the right culture that can create great experiences and exceptional experiences with customers? Do we have a great culture where employees feel that they can thrive? If you don't have those things, you will have a disconnect between what you're trying to achieve in customer experience and what your employee experience is. And so I think, you can go into studies, you can hear people talk about it, but it really is, the proof is in the pudding. And, there are different ways that you can measure the ROI on employee experience in a multitude of factors. But what's really, really amazing is that it becomes this strong growth engine for customer experience that enhances your net promoter score, that enhances your retention rates, that reduces your churn. And, the less employees you have churning, the more that you're able to help your customers best. So that's kind of my $5 and my 2 cents.
That's perfectly articulated. I love that. And Marie, you want to add to that? Anything from the healthcare lens?
Yeah, I mean, I just think consistency is just so important here. I think that, making sure that, the connection isn't top down, because, all of us up in senior leadership can say, this is something that we're really excited about, and we know that there's going to be great return. But if middle managers and your other managers aren't feeling empowered to create those types of exciting employee experiences, things that make people feel good, it's going to get lost in the shuffle. And I think that oftentimes, that connection between something that comes from the top and then something actually out in the field, is challenging. So I do think it is about making sure there's some consistency throughout the organization. And I know that's something that, we look to do and really enable our middle managers to create a fantastic employee experience. And we're not just relying on things from upper management and mandates and, communication and all that kind of stuff. It really is more of a culture shift.
No, I really think you hit it right on the head here. And I want to stay with that. And let's talk a little bit more from a building on that workplace where both sides are a factor. So can you give us an example, Marie, of a practical change that you've made that you feel has really helped employees thrive and has somehow resulted also in that improved customer experience as an outcome?
Yeah, absolutely. So for us, it was really making investments into how we communicate and engage. And so we went from, your traditional kind of emailing, employees and a, desktop intranet, and moved into an app and desktop technology, and really came up with a really wonderful strategy that was a game changer for us. And so, what we do is we kind of educate on how you communicate, how you can get information, and then we kind of engage. And so we're using it in a way that's very engaging. So it brings people to the platforms, brings people, to the communication method. And then we are repeating it. So we're not just teaching people and onboarding, like, here's how we communicate as an organization, here's what we do, and then kind of leave it. It's continual throughout the year. So we call it internally our educate, engage, repeat strategy. But it's been a real game changer for us because, you learn something in onboarding, or you learn something once it's launched, and then it kind of goes by the wayside. And so for us, it's been really kind of implementing this digital technology, because we are largely a mobile workforce, because we are in healthcare. And so not everybody has a computer. And so emails sometimes don't work as well, but the app technology really did. But it goes beyond just the technology. It's with a strategy that's really been in place, and we're listening, and we're looking at our metrics, and we're using the platform in a way that is how our employees want to communicate. And we're at a 97% rate at this point of employees on our digital platform,
Wow.
or intranet, which is unheard of. And so, we've been really excited with the results. And again, it's just been part of a huge culture shift. But I think it goes beyond the tool, because you can have a lot of tools, but if you don't have the right strategy in place, it's not going to stick.
Well, it sounds also like you have the leadership buy-in to continue to carry that torch forward. And the more excitement you have around this, the more ideas are going to come through, and you're going to just keep taking it to the next level and really championing that cause in a broader, grander way. So this is huge. 97%. Wow.
Yeah, we're very excited about it. And the platform
Congratulations.
that we built it on is very excited about it. And so, we've been able to work with them and speak at conferences and things. So we've been really excited about our results.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. Sakari, I know that you have a solution at Happy Signals that is really engaged with collecting sentiment from your customers, who are mostly your employees, as far as I understand, right? Or maybe they have some external. Tell us a little bit more about an example, for instance, where they are applying that change in their approach, and it's really manifesting in better customer experience.
Well, there's a few different ways, and one thing when it comes to the overall employee experience in the workplace, Jacob Morgan, some of you might know him, has written about employee engagement and experience at work to large extents. And he was saying that the experience at work and the engagement at work consists of technology, people, and culture, technology, and physical space. So technology, culture, and physical space. And so what we measure then is that experience with the technology, experience with IT. And we know that, like Mary was referring to, the internet and the technology, the mobile applications, 97% adoption. What our tool would then do, what we would go in and see, is that how happy are people with that, the applications and the tools that they're using internally in the workplace. And sometimes IT, especially the larger the organization gets, the more disconnected they can become just by the sheer size of the organization from the everyday reality. What is the perception of IT with those employees, and do they perceive to lose time in those different IT touch points? So we just created a very simple way. We want it to be as plug and play as possible for organizations to go in and measure what is the IT experience, so that they can then see the gaps, see the little improvement areas where they can still make improvements and get towards a happier workforce with this specific part of the technology. But as Jacob Morgan pointed out, it's not the only thing. And both of you have already referred to culture as well. How do you instill that culture? Because the way that people feel, and if they feel like they're valued, that is also something that will be reflected in the technology experience, and probably in the physical space that is being created around them as well.
But it goes to what most organizations miss is, if you show that you care and you ask them for input, then you need to be able to action that out. You need to do something with it. You need to be able to make improvements and changes in order for that experience to be better, right? So I know there were a couple comments. I think it was really around reinforcing what we were saying before, which is you really do need to care about the employee experience from a different way. It's critical. I see Michael Kubik over here saying that employees that are brought in and customers that have a need that is being uniquely met is the key. And I completely agree with that. And Right on his heels is Maxine saying, when employees are engaged, invested, and well taken care of, it will impact productivity, retention, and growth. That's absolutely true. Less turnover, less disengagement, less absenteeism, less redundant activities, and more creativity. And I think what we don't measure is how much we gain from the creativity of our employees that manifest in improvements that ultimately give that better customer experience, those wow moments, right? Courtney, did you have any examples you wanted to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think for every company, it's going to be, the approach might be a little different, right? You have to know where your starting point is. I can share that at AGCO, they were coming off the heels of a brand new strategy, a brand new CEO, and they decided that they wanted to stand up a customer experience organization with the goal of being the most customer-centric company in the industry. And so they're in the agriculture equipment industry, so they make tractors and combines and things for farming. So predominantly the customer is the farmers. Now, the structure of an agriculture equipment company is very much like the car industry, where you have a B2B2C relationship. So your customers are buying from dealerships, right? And then the financial transaction happens between the manufacturer and the dealer. However, the whole chain of experience happens at the dealership, sometimes direct, sometimes online, and it's a combination of those touch points between, the farmer, the dealer, and the manufacturer. And it happens over the life cycle of the machine because they need to, buy parts, there's maintenance, there's service. And while some farmers turn over their machines every 3 to 5 years, others will hold on to them for 20, 25 years. And those machines are still in the family when they pass down the farm.
Wow.
You can see where this experience is so strong in such a relationship style business. Now, stepping into AGCO, when they stood up CX, it was a blank sheet of paper. And I was really happy for that because you get to kind of start things out on the right foot. But I think one of the biggest challenges at the very beginning was, who is the customer? And so, when we started, the people who were dealer facing, and most people are dealer facing, they're like, well, the dealer's our customer, right? And the HR was like, well, our customers are employees. And IT was like, well, the employees are our, customers. So when you talk about customer, what is customer experience? And so we really had to sit firm and say, well, we innovate the machines for the farmer, and ultimately we're here to ensure farmer success. So let's switch this from a customer-centric kind of talking point to, how do we become farmer first? And so when we started out, we wanted everyone to understand and know and be able to say in their own words, what does farmer first mean to them? And how do they live that out in their day-to-day jobs? And so we took a bit of a risk in the team, and we went to the organization and asked people at all levels what farmer first meant to them. And these were people who were called out as culture champions, earlier on. And it was really interesting to hear what they said. And they basically had great ways to articulate, if you're an accountant, if you're in HR, if you are several layers back from a farm and may never step foot on a farm, that they could say what farmer first meant to them and how do they show up. And they all took a video. So I asked, I would love these videos. And we took 80 videos. They all sent them on their phones. It was very low analog, right? So it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. And we sent that out to the organization. And it became this campaign of, what does farmer first mean to me? And the impact of that wasn't necessarily just to, get the connection of who the customer is, but it's also for those employees to understand how they fit and why they matter, and that their work, even if they're not going to a farm, that they don't need to go to a farm to know that their work is valued. And without their work, this whole machine of the organization wouldn't, it wouldn't be able to move without them. So it's really, it's a great way to connect those two, but it was such a small, practical way to get everybody on board. And can I just say, I love the comments and when they pop up on the screen.
I know. Isn't it great? This last one is from Sanjay. Psychological safety is a very important factor in getting honest feedback. Absolutely. Well, what you did with that example is you shared how you created a safe environment for people to show up and connect the dots and say, yeah, my work matters because I do this thing and that enables these other things to happen, and it's part of the big picture, right? And it's very easy if you have a back office operation to not truly understand the impact of what you're doing. You just do a job and you just feel like you're in a redundant daily mode, but you don't realize how significant what you do is unless you actually start to talk to other people and communicate that. And I feel it's really amazing. And I'm gonna pause and just share one example in a second, but I think 𝗗𝗶𝗴𝗶𝗁𝗂𝗂𝗂 said something. I would like to know how that employee feedback is collected and analyzed. So I think that question is for you, Courtney. Maybe you wanna
Yeah.
share a little bit more about that.
Also, Zachary and Mary, step in because I know you guys have some really rich experience in this space as well. I think one of the big things that we did, Vladimir, was that well, my team wasn't responsible for the employee experience, but we worked very closely with that team to say, how do we make sure that we're asking the right questions, especially with the survey knowledge and expertise sitting in customer experience, to make sure that we're asking the right things where we know where we need to improve and that the questions are meaningful to where we want to go. And so there was a yearly engagement survey with quarterly pulse points to be able to discern that. But I think what was most important, and Nora, you had shared this briefly earlier, one of the most important things was that we had to do something with it because they'd been doing employee surveys for many years, but not necessarily activating or actioning or talking about what the results were. And so it became a point and a part of the culture to have this level of transparency around speaking up and that encouraging employees to speak up and use those surveys as those times and others as well. But then it made a point that leadership at all levels, at all locations, were talking about the feedback and actioning on the feedback and said, hey, these are the top 3 things we're going to focus on, this quarter or this year to be able to improve what's happening in the eyes of the employees. And so for us, it was very structured, but that approach, we had to create that feedback loop, which we all know is so important in customer experience. It absolutely is critical for your employees.
That's an awesome story. Thank you for sharing that. I see Maxine just commented that on that. And I know that she is very much about thriving inclusively and talking to all levels of leadership and employees in the organization. And of course, this is so pivotal. One thing I go back to is what we had talked about when we were getting to know each other earlier. It's around that concept of what motivates people, especially employees. I went back to what Daniel Pink had said in Drive around autonomy, mastery, and purpose. If you can get people into an area where they understand their purpose and they can connect the dots, like those stories that you just shared here, Courtney, and what you did also, Marie, and I'm sure, Sakari, you've got a lot of examples of this, where they connect to the purpose, it really changes the way they approach work. It becomes joyful, it becomes a mission for them, right? And the ability to master and take things to a different level, well, that's internal pride. And if they have the ability to do things in a somewhat autonomous way, it's not always somebody breathing down their neck and micromanaging them, you get creativity tenfold. So there's so much to that. And I think a lot of organizations don't unlock that secret formula of those 3 things, and they miss out. Maybe they give 1 or 2 of these, but they don't always give it all the way. And we have to change that. There has to be much more of a trust and inspire mindset and culture, I think, versus this command and control in order for employee experience to really be a differentiator, almost like a secret weapon, right? All right, so we covered a lot of ground. I'm going to switch a little bit about action. Let's go into lessons. Perhaps a lesson either you or someone you work closely with learned, maybe the hard way, maybe it's the easy way, by underestimating employee experience. And how did that affect your brand? How did that affect your service? let's start with you, Sakari. I'm pretty sure you have some lessons you want to share, at least one.
Yeah, I can tell you one interesting one when it comes to maybe underestimating how little things can make a difference. We had
Yeah.
a customer who was a Norwegian company in the energy and infrastructure space. So they had thousands of employees working in Norway, working on oil rigs, things like that. And they decided that they were going to outsource their IT service delivery to a country that was outside of Europe. And one of the things was that these cultural differences were so subtle. In the beginning, the service provider decided that when they get a call from an employee, they should answer the phone and say, "Hello, sir or madam, what's your name? How is the weather today? Or how is your family doing? Are you having a good day?" And they were wondering, like, why aren't we getting sort of the type of scores? We have a
Right.
polite script, we're doing what we know is right. But then they started looking into the feedback data from the employees. And this comes back to, sometimes we've heard the golden rule: treat others as the way that you would want to be treated. But think about the rule: treat others as they would like to be treated.
That's the platinum
So
rule.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
it
what
trumps the
they
golden
did
rule.
is and what they did is that they discovered that in Norway, actually what those employees were expecting was that they would not talk about family, etc. They just wanted their problem fixed. They were in high stress environments, where they were working. So they changed the script from "Hello, how are you doing?" to just "How can I help?" Just that little change into meeting the people where they were at their terms actually changed, and they were able to raise the experience scores that they saw in the platform based on that small change. And that empathy, sort of understanding what is the context in which I'm meeting the person that I'm serving, whether it's a colleague that you're helping to do a great job to provide that customer experience, or whether it is that frontline worker meeting a customer where they are in the way that they would like to be met. It's the little things. So I think sometimes it can feel counterintuitive that these small changes and providing a condition or a circumstances at work so that individual employees can make those micro decisions in every moment and know what is the outcome that the organization wants me to come to, so that they can get creative with these little things. And a lot of times those grassroots level workers are the ones that have the best information and knowledge about what experience actually should look like and how they can provide the best experience. And then it becomes a question about how can the organization enable those employees to get creative, to actually make their own decisions in the moment that they know will drive the best experience. So don't underestimate the small things in customer experience or in employee experience, because it's often in the details where the differences are being made.
That's such a great example. I think people underestimate the power of these tiny tweaks that you make along the way. I think it's more important that you're doing it in an agile way versus waiting until you've got like a massive change to implement, because drastic change puts people off versus these minor adjustments along the way. Marie, we haven't heard from you on this. Ideas on things that may have actually made a big difference from just a slight change or something you overlooked?
Yeah, about 25 years ago, I was an employee at an organization that was going through a merger. And I was in the organization that was being acquired. And so there was no communication, very little communication. And, again, the power of communication is just so important. And so all of us who are from the other organization, all of a sudden we're given all of this stuff, no explanation, no even introduction to the new organization or culture. It's just kind of like, here it is, here's your new email, here's your new company, all of that kind of stuff. And, there was just no buy-in at all from those employees, and it hurt morale. Many of them left. And again, they were not talking about the organization in a positive way. A lot of the communication was, you guys should be happy. We're this really great brand. Now you're part of this great culture. And there was kind of this, people were not taking into consideration that there was also a powerful culture and a group of people that really liked their workplace. And so about 5 years ago, I had the opportunity to lead this type of transformation at my workplace when we were part of a merger, doing a complete rebrand and merging 3 very different cultures into one. And I was able to use that experience of the lack of communication to make sure that we were even over communicating in some ways and providing a lot of tools and information for staff and taking them along the way. with storytelling, with, getting our employees to understand we're going to be part of this new exciting culture. We're not coming in, because at this time I was a part of the organization that was leading it. We're not coming in to take your culture, which was kind of something I was a part of 25 years ago. We are coming in to create this great new culture, a vibrant culture with everyone. And so, I think it was understanding how important communication was in getting people to have buy-in to the change and be part of the change. And so again, we over communicated, which was great. People knew where to go to get information, but just the importance of communication, even if it's something employees aren't going to be able to do anything about, something like a merger. We're not able to, change that, but our employees are able to have a voice, and they should have a voice. And I think what I learned being on the other side of it really helped to enhance what became a very successful, coming together of three very distinct cultures. And, I work there now. Nobody even remembers their former culture because we built such a great new culture when we all came together.
What a great success story. It sounds like a perfect zero to hero situation.
Yeah,
You took something that was supposed to be really, really impactful and it wasn't. And then you really fine-tuned it and made it a differentiator for how you run your business from that point forward, right? And it's a lot of those little things that people miss because they didn't qualify the communication. They didn't really think about the impact of what they're doing. They were just going through checklists, right?
Absolutely.
Courtney, any ideas that you want to share an example of something like that?
Yeah, I would just dovetail to what already has been said. And I think one thing that's been important in the last few, if you creep on my LinkedIn, I do transformation. So, whether it's supply chain, whether it's commercial, standing up businesses. So, exactly what we're talking about is so important, no matter the size of the organization that's happening in. I think one thing that I always keep in mind, and similar to Mary, it's because I've experienced throughout the years of when it doesn't go well, is that the communication, the culture change or shift, or getting employees, kind of understanding their value and their why, and even understanding the mission of the organization. It has to happen both top down and bottom up.
For sure.
And so leveraging the grassroots people within the organization who can also talk about it and walk the talk. Oftentimes employees feel that, the leaders of the organization are far from what's happening in the day-to-day. And that can happen in a retail store. It can happen in a boutique, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be like the size of, the organization that matters. It can happen. And oftentimes it's true. Like, we have to be honest with ourselves there. And so what has been really successful is helping people understand, that, or leaders understanding that we also need to make sure that we're leveraging these champions across the organization at multiple levels so they can help with this. And they become those beacons that can bring other employees on as well. And so it becomes such a powerful, tool within a transformation or in a large scale change, because now you see it permeating across the organization. I would say the other thing is that I had a mission, an AGCO, to make farmer first and doing things for the farmer annoying, absolutely annoying. They would see it everywhere. I wanted them to be absolutely inundated with it and just be, oh. And I joked that it was annoying, but really it helped to put this passion behind it, where in the factories, right, there's a picture of a farmer. We're talking about farmer first. We need to have that everywhere. It should be in every location, and everyone should be talking about how their work helps to make that happen. It has to be this constant reminder. And so to, both Mary and Zachary's points on this, communication is so key, and you have to do that in a multitude of ways.
Oh, for sure, for sure. As you were talking, I was thinking, because I was also in healthcare. So for the 10 years, I was leading a team over there that was very, very in touch with the different layers of the operation. What I realized is a lot of IT individuals really don't understand how the work they do impacts the entire operation. And I remember the moment where I thought, wait a second, I need to get them out of where they are and out into the business so that they actually see how the technology is being used, understand the workflow, understand the touch points with the patient, understand the patient experience, because that's another customer. That's the ultimate customer, right? And we started this tour situation where we were taking the service desk operations, the front lines, who only knew people by phone, and put them out into the field. And they toured 4 facilities over 4 days, went through every important department, and came back raving around what they learned and experiencing all these different layers of the operation, but then changing their mindset completely, because now they wanted to solution find. They wanted to find alternatives to make it easier and less waste time and reduce the pressure and the pain to those who are in a very, very dire situation dealing with life or death situations, right? And it was transformative. And ultimately, it ended up being a very expanded program where other individuals tacked on, and we made it almost a mandatory operational activity for onboarding of new employees. And fast forward through COVID, we actually made it an electronic program where it was just a course that they could take online, and they did 360 tours of the facilities. What was beautiful about that experience is the individuals who were the heads of the departments, the different units, they're the ones who wanted to educate and explain their piece of the puzzle, their purpose. And the way they spoke passionately, it was contagious. It's impossible to hear the head nurse or the person in the OR or the pharmacist or the lab technician talk about their interaction and their purpose and not feel that mission and want to help. So the more we get people excited about the purpose, the mission, and wanting to do something for the greater good, the more they're going to actually translate that into, I think, mastery of their own activity. Make sense?
Absolutely. Well, empathy is so key, right? Empathy, for the customers, empathy for the employees. I mean, that is it's such a theme through everything that's been said already.
Sakari, I wanted to go back to what we had shared yesterday. You had a document or some learnings that you wanted to share with us. Can you bring that up, or do you have that handy?
Of course.
All right. You didn't bring it up, so I didn't want to lose it because it was so good yesterday that we really have to share this with this audience. I'm going to turn it to you. Are you able to share through here?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's just the book. So the book is called The 9 Lies About Work, and the one of the things when I was looking into, I was studying employee engagement and employee experience, trying to understand what are actually the drivers of successful employee experience programs. And what this book, 9 Lies About Work by Marcus Buckingham and Ashley Goodall, is really great. They studied 5,000 employees at Cisco, and they found that there are essentially 8 questions that will define whether or not an employee will have a good experience. And what they did is that they really looked into what are the key drivers of a good engagement. And there's 4 questions that concern the employees' reflection about their own role in the organization. And there are 4 questions that reflect upon their role as a part of a team. And we know that teamwork makes the dream work, this old saying, but it is true. And those questions are related to myself as an employee are: at work, I clearly understand what is expected of me. And based on the stories that Mary and Courtney also shared, you can immediately understand how important it is that the people doing Farmer First or working in the hospital with towards those common goals, they need to understand what is expected of them. Second question, I have the chance to use my strengths every day at work. So putting the right people in the right places so that they can provide the value for the organization. Third one, I will be recognized for excellent work. Once again, this comes down to incentives, middle management, leadership, so that everyone is aligned on what is excellent work. Should I be completing a process to the letter or provide a good experience? If I have to make a choice one day, which one do I choose? Next one is, in my work, I'm always challenged to grow. We all know that we want to do a good job, so how can we foster an environment where that growth can happen naturally? Then there's the 4 questions that relate to the we, to the team. In my team, I'm surrounded by people who share my values. Once again, it's obvious why that is important. My teammates have my back. When you have to make those tough choices sometimes, knowing that your team has your back makes it so much easier. The two last ones are, I'm really enthusiastic about the mission of my company. The story that Mary told earlier about the three companies joining together, maybe there was a loss of that feeling of understanding and being enthusiastic about the mission until that new culture was being instilled. And the last one is, I have great confidence in my company's future. When the company fosters a good employee experience and you see that customers are happy, well, you know your company is going to have a great future. So all of these things sort of fall in, and it's sort of common sense, but it's so wonderful how this book outlines how this is so uncommon, despite the fact that it should be common sense.
I love that you shared that insight, and I know that we just put that link to the book. So hopefully, I'm going to go out and get this because I absolutely want to learn more. But those are such deep questions, and having the courage to ask some of those questions and really listen, that's something. And obviously, to do something with that information and that insight is huge. And it's so sad to hear that so many organizations do these annual assessments, right? Employee engagement assessments, but you never really hear what came out of it, to the point that it's better actually not to do them if you're not going to share the progress and how you're caring about that input and that feedback. All right, well, thank you so much for that. Ladies, any comments on what you heard from that book? Ideas?
No, but I'm going to get it. So it really speaks to what makes the employee experience, great. And I think that it's, certainly pillars to remember, as you are, introducing a new change or even onboarding, making sure that those are paramount. And so people do know what they're supposed to do and, have great feelings for where they work. It's just so important, but I love that.
Yeah, I agree with you. All right, so I think we're coming close to time here, and I wanted to end on a really strong question. And this is future forward. Where do we go from here? In other words, if EX is what's behind CX and improving EX is going to really get us to a better overall customer experience, what's a bold move that you think companies can make now that will make them stay competitive or put them on the edge, right? Make them really have that undiscernible advantage. So thoughts, what do you think they could do? At least one suggestion from each of you. What do you think? Courtney, let's go with you first. Sorry, Marie, I didn't realize.
Mary, go for it. Take it, Mary.
No, I mean, my suggestion would just be to, it's kind of what I mentioned earlier, is to really flatten the hierarchy. I think sometimes it's, kind of scary to empower, when you're up in executive leadership and empowering employees. But remembering that culture isn't just the organization that you work for, it's the team that you're a part of. And so making sure that, your leaders throughout the organization are empowered to, provide recognition and train to make sure that they are also, providing the same experience that you're wanting all employees to receive. But really flattening that hierarchy and making sure that it's not just a mandate from leadership, that it's something that's ingrained throughout, and everybody feels empowered to create a wonderful experience for any employee. And whether that is a direct leader or an indirect reporting relationship, or even just two colleagues, making sure that, they feel that there's something that they can do. And it could be simple. It could be, a mechanism for sharing, agency-wide, somebody doing a great job, all the way to, recognizing people and providing incentives, monetary, all that kind of stuff. But just making sure that everyone feels empowered to create those great experiences, like big multinational organizations, they always talk about Marriott, and, those employees are empowered to provide great, customer service experience. And it doesn't matter what level that employee is on. It should be the same way for your employees at the organization. So really try to kind of flatten that hierarchy and make it everybody's responsibility to create those great experiences for all employees. But I think that doesn't happen very often. And something that would really be and is a differentiator moving forward for organizations.
Well, that is like gold, what you just said. Flattening out and empowerment and making culture something that is everybody's responsibility, not just the top level of leadership, right?
Yep.
I'll leave it to either of you to jump in. Whoever is ready, Courtney or Sakari, I'm ready.
Zachary, I'll go first. I think one of the pieces, if I could, and Mary, you summed that up so well. And I think one of the key things that organizations forget is that if you ask people and they really feel that you're going to do something with the information, they'll help you. So don't be afraid to go to your employees and ask them what needs to change, but only if you're willing to change. And so, oftentimes, and I'll share a quick customer experience piece of it. When we got started in AGCO, standing up customer experience, I didn't want to go directly out to farmers and ask them what are the things that they're looking, from us to improve. Because I knew that if we didn't fix the simple stuff that all of our employees knew about, it would make us look kind of foolish. It's like, hey, I've been telling your salesperson, I told the dealer about this. You guys have been doing this for years. Why are you asking me now how you guys can improve? And so really there's a lot of power in that employee base, but you have to make sure that you are A, willing to do something about it. B, that, you got to create that trust as well from them to be able to know that it is a safe space. And I think, to Mary's point about empowerment, empower your employees to make changes and improve things. Don't have it be a bureaucratic process to make small improvements or big ones. Get a group of people together who have a passion for it and make magic happen. I think that's a big piece of this employee experience. It never stops. And so people will always raise their hands to make things better. Not everybody, but the people who are passionate and want to make a difference will. And those are the people that you'll need to tap into to bring your employees forward, your culture forward, and really to help drive growth within the organization as well when you're looking at it from a financial perspective.
What a powerful example. Thank you. Really love that. And I think you touched on a lot of points, and it almost sounds like recognizing that you have to respect their voices, their presence, their input, because they are a huge part of that formula. Without them, we're basically shooting in the dark, right? Zachary.
Yeah, maybe I'll go with this one, and just a small phrase that I saw in a mountain biking video once. So it's a bit funny, but that your ego is not your amigo. There is so many times in the organizations when we think about like what is it in it for me, but just thinking like, us as an organization with my teammates, we should be standing shoulder to shoulder solving these hard problems. So if I can put my ego aside, it will be much easier for me and my colleagues to look at the issues that we have at hand, observe them for what they are, and then actually do something about it. So this little thing, like it keeps coming back to me over and over at work and in private life, like your ego is not your amigo, and that I think is a good reminder.
We're all going to have, aside from the book that we have to get, it's your ego is not your amigo.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That is so cool. Very catchy. I love that. And I think, being emotionally intelligent and self-aware is a huge tall order for leadership, basically, to step in and really recognize the human mindset and the emotions and the totality of an experience. It's not just the technical aspect of what people do. But I think you really hit the nail on the head there. And sometimes we don't have a good understanding of ourselves, and how do we lead others if we can't do that? And as Gavin is saying, empathy for employees and customers, that's absolutely key. Absolutely. Can't do it without empathy. As you guys were talking about your examples and your instructions on what to focus on, I was also thinking about something that a colleague of mine had said on a different digital dialogue hosted here on the Institute's platform. And this is Rebecca Rorek, who said, red carpet in, red carpet out. Make sure you're treating your employees like they are VIPs. Give them the red carpet when you're onboarding them. Treat them like the heroes that they are, because they are the carriers of the torch. They're the ones who are manifesting the totality of your experience. They are in charge of delivering service and product. So they need to feel like they matter, and in a big way. So roll out the red carpet, treat them with that kind of respect and admiration, and really, really treasure their existence, because throughout their mission, you will see the best of them because you've given them that. And they will translate that to their customers. Happy employees will absolutely bring about happy customers. You never see great experience coming from a miserable employee. You never, but you can get a miserable experience from a miserable employee, for sure. You almost could tell who's having a bad day, who's not being treasured, who's not being championed just by their own demeanor and how they interact with you. So the other part of it is red carpet out. So when they're ready to move on, also treat them with dignity or respect. Thank them for their time, because they will go on and continue to rave about your institution and recommend it to others. And that continues to evolve your brand despite you separating from each other. So I loved the red carpet in, red carpet out. I loved all the examples. Your ego is not your amigo. We're going to definitely talk about that in future conversations, I'm sure. So many great nuggets from this dialogue. I really, really enjoyed it. I want to pause and thank you all for joining me. And I hope that the audience that has attended and those who are watching it later on will find this equally as valuable as we are. And hopefully I will get to see you each in future interactions and meet you in person in the future as well. Thank you again. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining Digital Dialogue. Look for more episodes at noon Eastern Time on most Tuesdays of every month. Can't join the live session? You can watch the replay anytime on our YouTube channel.